for being here to celebrate Miss LueRachelle Brim-Atkins and all of her. Yes, it was an honor that you said yes to this project. Thank you so much. So, my name is Nakala Ayala. I am the founder of Joyful Practices, Joy Actualization Coaching for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. The premise of my work as a joy coach is that because of slavery and colonialism, Black and sorry, I'm going to run myself back because I did some things out of order. I am to ask for permission to speak and then invite the ancestors in through libation. So my apologies. Libation is a process of inviting the ancestors to come hang out with us, right? And there's a flow to it. There's some call and response, right? So I will say a few words about who I want you to think about bringing in. And then when you call out a name, I'll say Ashe, and then you say Ashe back. So let's just practice that real quick. Ashe. 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 Okay. So we are here in the spirit of honoring and cultivating joy. So I want you to think of the folks that have passed on that maybe struggled a little bit with their joy and would really appreciate being in the presence of joy today. So you can just start saying their names. Ashe. Ashe. Okay. All right. And for those who really knew how to be in joy and to be in the spirit of joy and showed everybody else how to do it. Nagesa, baby. Mm-hmm. Mr. Farr. Odell Majors. Edith Majors. William Majors. Ashe. 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 All right. And anyone else you want to invite that you know would have a good time here today? All right. Kevin, Big Kevin. Sunny. She can't call her right now. You know better than that. No, she can't come. Not here. All right. Ashe. 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 All right. Ashe. 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 All right. So now that the ancestors are here, we can get started. Yes. So, like I was saying, Joyful Practices, Joy Actualization Coaching for BIPOC folk. The premise of the work is that because of slavery and colonialism, Black and brown folks have had not only our bodies and our lands, but our gifts and our talents taken in service of white supremacy. And so generationally, we have internalized that trauma by overgiving in our families, overserving in our communities, and farming our beautiful gifts and talents out to places where we may or may not be, where we are made to feel like we don't belong. So my work is around helping folks identify their magic. Some of us don't have no problem with that. LueRachelle knows about her magic. But identify their magic and become the first beneficiary of their own gifts. So Like Fine Wine, Black Joy Over Time came out. It is a project of my business because Black History Month last year, I was like, I want to do some content for my business online. Maybe I'll ask a bunch of elders to share their stories of joy. And when I started doing them on Zoom, and I was like, okay, so the stories that are coming out are blowing my mind. Everybody needs to hear this. And I was like, I don't have the skills. And so I, really clarified the vision for the project and ended up reconnecting with Michael Main, who is the filmmaker on this project. And so I'm going to tell you how amazing this man is, how talented and kind and wonderful to work with, and patient. The man is patient. So please thank him for his patience with me. But, it's a very intimate thing to bring people into the homes of elders that you adore. And so my elders trusted me to bring a crew of people. And so I had to be really intentional about the folks that I brought. And over again, I heard how grateful they were and appreciative of Michael's presence. So when you see the work, the cinematography, that's that brother, and we're so grateful. We're going to have a little talk back at the end, and so we'll talk about some of the projects that Ms. LueRachelle has going on and ways that you can support and uplift and promote her work. But without further ado, let's start the film. LueRachelle Brim-Atkins, thank you so much for joining us for Like Fine Wine, Black Joy Over Time.
My pleasure.
I'm so excited to have you here. This project is in addition to being an opportunity for the community to hear about the ways that folks in our community have historically and currently experienced joy in our lives. It's also an opportunity for me to love on folks that have contributed to my development. And I met you when I was 29 and getting ready to turn 30. I was like 3 weeks from 30. Yes. And it was just a pivotal time and one of many pivotal times in my life. And it was such a joy to travel with you to Kenya. And it was really powerful seeing the ways that you navigated some of the challenges that we came across. The trip's intention was to connect women of the African diaspora to women in Kenya and to hang out and support work that was happening in communities on the ground. And I remember a time when we found out that some of the girls at one of the programs was being mistreated, and you were on fire about it. And where everyone was upset and bothered by it, but you were like, no, we can't just be upset about it and leave.
Absolutely.
Right. And so since then, I've known you to be really creative and resourceful around the ways that you leverage communities that you're in to resource different projects around the world. So from clean water projects to the one that I always tell people about is the menstrual pad kits for girls in Cameroon and in Kenya. So you organize different spiritual communities, like not just churches, but a synagogue and a mosque,
Catholic church,
and a Catholic church,
and AME church.
See, that who does that? You do it because you're magical and you're joyful, but you're an inspiration to me, and you're someone that I look to when I think about how to leverage resource
to make things easier and more joyful for other people. And so I really appreciate you being that example.
Thank you for that. You know, my grandfather always said, Christ said, if you love me, you feed my sheep. So for people who say they have a spiritual connection to God, for me it is, then you need to be doing something for somebody else. And if you're not, what is that?
Right.
What is that?
Right. And I think one of the beautiful things about you is that you do that, but you also have a lot of fun.
I do.
And it's like,
you only come this way once that we are aware of.
Right.
May as well have a good time while we're here.
Right. So, like, how do you, I mean, one of the things I ask myself, and maybe you'll answer through our time together, is how do you manage to get so much work done and enjoy yourself so much while you're doing it?
Well, I don't do work that I don't enjoy doing. That does not mean that all work is fun for me. I do racial equity work, so that's not always fun. In fact, many times it's not. But there's a joy that comes with doing the work because I know there's a goal. That somebody will feel differently or be treated differently because we create a path for them. And so it just brings me joy to know that I can impact that. And I just... You know, I know that people look for their purpose in life and they look for the work that they were called to the planet to do. And I'm just so blessed that I found mine really early on and have used the rest of my life to do that. Even when I was teaching, which is not what I wanted to do, because all of my people were teachers, my grandparents, my parents. And I was like, I'm not going to teach. And then, of course, I taught for a few years. But even at that, I taught differently than a lot of other teachers. I'd invite kids to my house. We'd have chili parties. Then the boys would go home. The girls would stay and try to tell me raunchy jokes. And, and you know, 50 years later, I'm still in touch with some of them. Wow. So it's like... people say, well, you know, that would probably be illegal today. And I'm like, well, that's probably why I'm not doing it. Because I can't do that. I can't do anything unless I feel the joy that comes from it.
Right.
And that's what those kids gave me.
Right.
They talk about what I gave them, but they have given me unspeakable joys.
Right.
Just to let me be part of their lives and to make an impact. That just brings me joy. If I couldn't do it that way, I didn't want to do it.
Yeah. That makes sense. So tell us, can you tell us some of the ways that you experienced joy as a child? Or share?
Oh, yeah. You know, I have such great memories of my childhood. I grew up in Texas in a segregated community, so that was not joyous.
Right.
I mean, that situation was not joyous. But I had a family who knew how to have fun. So my grandparents, we used to play games, board games, card games, those kinds of things. But my grandmother was a great cook. And she liked to cook and she liked to eat and we liked to eat her cooking. She would make this wonderful food and then she would teach me how to make it. But this part was slightly annoying because she'd say, you just need a little more sugar. Just a little more salt. And I think about that now and I think it was her way of saying you got to be a really, really good cook. Because in my house you did it well. Or you didn't do it. That was the message.
Right.
But it was fun to sit in the kitchen with her and cook. It was also fun to watch the two of them, my two grandparents, interact with each other because they liked each other.
Oh, that's so
sweet. They loved each other, but they liked each other.
Yeah, say more about that because I feel like that is unfortunately super rare, but I love seeing that.
Well,
couples.
you know, when I was a kid, I took it for granted. So I just thought they were old people, and that's what old people did. Till I grew up and I met some old people, and they were not experiencing that level of joy.
Right.
But they would wake up in the middle of the night. I would hear them talking, middle of the night they'd be talking. And my grandfather would say, I sure have a taste for apple pie. And my grandmother would say, well, let's get up and cook one. And they'd get up and he would peel the apples. She'd make the pastry. They'd put this pie together, talk to each other while the pie was cooking. And in the morning, I'd wake up and see 2 slices of pie cut out. I mean, it was, and I was thinking, who are these people? But they loved each other and they liked each other. So little things brought me joy growing up in this small town, Naples, Texas. Walking in a field after a rain.
Wow. What
You could just smell the nitrogen being released in the air. I'd walk barefoot and just, I relaxed thinking about it. Picking peaches off the trees in our orchard, or picking blackberries off the vines and making blackberry cobbler and all of that. Going fishing with my brothers.
Wow.
I mean, I look back at it and think, boy, that was fun, but we just thought that was the way the world works.
Back to the fish. What kind of fish did you catch?
We caught brim
Okay.
and catfish.
Okay.
And we had our own ponds. We had 3 ponds on our property.
Wow.
And I remember once we went, my 3 brothers and I went fishing, and my grandfather dug the worms for us, and off to the pasture we went to go fishing. And big pond, and way across the pond we saw water moving. And we're like, oh, what is that? And then the water kept moving. We realized it was a water moccasin.
Ooh.
And we dropped the poles, we dropped the buckets. The worms were released. And up the hill we ran screaming. I mean, screaming the entire way.
Wow.
And my grandmother thought something was wrong. She's like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And we were like, I'm water moccasin. And she's like, did it bite you? And we're like, no. She said, where was it? We were like, across the pond. This huge pond. There was no way that snake could have gotten us. My grandmother was on the ground laughing. Oh. She thought that was, she said, but I mean, it was not only did we learn to laugh, we had to laugh at ourselves, because my people laughed at us and at themselves.
Yeah.
And she thought that was hysterical. We failed to see the humor.
Right.
But she thought it was. So just little things like that. You know, and I look back at it and think, there are snakes in Texas, and there are rattlesnakes, all kinds of snakes.
Yeah.
But we would go into our pasture and pick these blackberries, and I know there were snakes all around. It never occurred to us. We were just happy to be with each other, picking berries, because we knew there was going to be a cobbler at the end of it.
Right.
The ones that we didn't eat on our way home.
Right.
Yeah, so just little things that people would probably think are inconsequential.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Actually, picking blackberries was something that gave me a lot of joy as a kid.
Yeah.
And and every summer I wait for the first one.
Yes.
And then, but that's my challenge to myself is to make some blackberry pies. You heard it.
Oh, I heard that challenge. Invite me over.
I will.
I remember my mother came to visit me here in Seattle. And there are blackberries all around, but very few people pick them. And my mother said, you can tell there's no depression. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, there are berries on the vines.
Right.
She said during the Depression, those vines would have been picked clean because people were hungry and they ate any food that they could find.
Right.
And I had never thought about it, because I was one of the ones passing by some of these vines.
Right. Right.
That had berries on them. Yeah. So those little things brought me joy as a kid. I used to watch my grandparents play dominoes together. And yeah.
Wow,
Being in their presence brought me joy because they were good people. My mom, my maternal grandparents, I knew them better than my paternal grandparents. But they just seemed to know how to have fun despite the circumstances in which they found themselves. Because my grandparents founded the African American high school in our town, and it served the county.
Wow.
And they had to fight tooth and nail. My grandfather had more education than the white principal. He made less money.
Yeah.
He had to pay the light bill
of the school
for the school, and the white school paid their own. They had taxes paid. I mean, just horrible kinds of things, and yet they managed to find joy in living, and did a really good job, I think, of trying to shelter us from the nastiness that was around us.
Yeah.
Kept us at the church where people loved us and we knew that we were loved. We didn't dare get in trouble because we knew that the news would get home before we did.
Right.
And we just knew that. Nobody ever said, they're going to tell if you get out of hand. But just knowing that whole black community had our backs.
Yeah.
And would do their best to protect us.
Yeah.
Which was no small feat.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I'm talking about this. This is bringing me joy.
I'm so happy. It's certainly bringing me joy.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like such a magical childhood. What about your 20s and 30s? Like, what was that like for you in terms of joy?
Yeah. So my 20s and 30s, I don't know if you know what a poll tax is. A poll tax?
Not exactly.
So, in Texas, in order to vote, people had to pay a poll tax.
Was it all people that had to pay a poll tax?
Yeah, theoretically. But, poor people couldn't afford the poll tax, and many black people were poor. My grandfather, because he was an educator, was the only black person in our town who was allowed to vote. And I don't know that he was allowed to vote. He just voted. He just went to vote. And my mother said that when they were children, he would walk into town, which was 4 miles from our farm, and vote and walk back. And they would sit nervously at the edge of the lawn. And when they'd see him, they'd run and greet him as though he had been on a trip, because they never knew whether he'd come back alive.
Wow.
Now, years later, he found out that his ballot was discarded as soon as he left the voting.
Wow.
So when people tell me they don't vote, I'm like, oh, no, I vote.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote because my grandfather risked his life for me to vote.
Yeah.
Even if I don't think there are any candidates worth voting for, I'm just going to choose the lesser of the two evils and vote because it's my way of honoring him.
Yeah.
And for them to have that kind of a life circumstance and still have fun.
Yeah.
It's like, how dare I act as though the world is coming to an end because I have some misery.
Yeah.
Misery comes with life, but you still find the joy in it.
Yeah.
And that's... So 20s and 30s, I was registering people to vote.
Wow.
Walking in places, in taverns that I had never been in. My people were teetotalers. And registering people to vote and hearing people say things like, well, I can't afford the poll tax. And we were saying, did you know they had abolished the poll tax? They had repealed it. You didn't have to pay. But that the powers that be didn't want people to know that. They didn't want black people to know that. They wanted them still to think that they couldn't afford to vote.
Yeah.
So that brought me joy, just to bring that good news. We no longer have to pay the poll tax, and you get... Now, we registered people. I don't know how many of them voted, but that wasn't my contribution. My
Right.
contribution was to get them registered. And we walked
Right.
those streets just, as one of my friends says, happy as if we had good sense. We were just, it was like we felt like we were making a difference.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things that brought me joy was I graduated from University of Texas.
Okay.
Hook 'em horns. And there were no black football players at the University of Texas.
Wow. What year?
I graduated in 1968.
Okay.
And Darrell Royal, who was the coach, said that black boys' morals were too low to play for him, and they weren't smart enough to get into the University of Texas.
Wow.
The football stadium is now named for Darrell Royal, but that's another whole political discussion that I won't venture into. So my Saturdays were spent picketing to get black boys on the football team.
Wow.
And we'd actually go to the games and cheer for whoever we were playing if they had black guys playing. So University of Arkansas, for crying out loud, had black football players before we did.
Wow.
And so we go and hold up our placards that said Bevo, that was the mascot, Bevo the longhorn steer. Bevo needs soul. So, it's like even in protest, you have to have a sense of humor.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then they tell us if we held up our placards, they were going to throw us out. So we'd reverse the placards and they'd say something else. Just as much fun.
Yeah.
And until they did eventually throw us out, and we'd wait for the next game. But, it's like joy comes from believing that you're making a difference. That's for me. Even if you don't see the difference.
Yeah.
It's like Johnny Appleseed planting trees under which he would never sit and would never gather the apples, but he did it because that's what you do.
Yeah.
There's an expression, service is the rent you pay for being on planet Earth. And I really believe that. And when you do it, you get more joy than other people can even imagine.
Yeah.
So 20s, I was in picket lines and having a great time because I thought I was making a difference for somebody. I don't even like football, but that wasn't the point.
Wow.
That wasn't the point. The point was we have a right to play football.
Right.
We not only do we have a right, but you have a right to have a winning football team.
Right.
Hello.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome very much. Yeah. So that was my 20s. So I graduated college at 21 and struck out for graduate school.
Okay. Wow. So what does joy look like nowadays?
Oh, where do I start? So one of the things my children warn people about is do not mention Africa to her, please. Because
Haters.
we'll be here all night. If somebody says, well, have you been to... No, don't ask her. Please don't, because it's my favorite topic.
Yeah.
One of my favorite topics, So joy, one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, John Sharon, he had us do a life purpose statement. And mine, and we do a meditation and then you come up with it. And mine was, and still is, creating and grabbing joy. I changed the world.
So I just learned this about you today.
Yeah.
Maybe an hour ago.
Yeah.
And I did not know this before I invited you to be a participant. And it makes me so happy that one, you even have a mission statement for your life. Or is it a vision or mission statement?
Well, we call it a life purpose statement. Why are you here?
Right.
So I'm here to create and grab joy so that I can change the world.
I love it.
And it really does guide my presence in the world. So I want to make a difference. I want to change the world. It's a lofty goal. I understand that. But I need to have joy while I'm doing it. So what brings me joy today? I'm co-president of Seattle Limbe Cameroon Sister City Association. And Seattle has 21 sister cities.
Wow.
2 are in Africa. So Mombasa, Kenya, that we have visited with Marsha Tatarunga.
Yeah.
And the other is Limbe, Cameroon. And both of those sister cities were established by Dr. Millie Russell, who has since passed away. May she rest in peace.
I did not know that she established them.
Both of them. She and her husband, Ed.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we've been to Cameroon 3 times. We would have gone more than that, but they are embroiled in civil war at the moment. So we don't go to countries that are fighting.
Right.
But one of the things that is really important to me is to feel connected to the continent.
Yeah.
And Nkrumah is credited with saying, we are African. Not because we were born in Africa, but because Africa was born in us. And I feel that it's at the deepest levels of who I am. And so I take people to Africa. When the Civil War started in Cameroon, we didn't go that next year, and then we decided, well, we can't give up our work. So we went to Togo and Benin, 2 amazing countries. We got caught in Togo by COVID and had to scurry home. Yeah. But we do work with menstrual care products. We create them here, and we do that in cross-cultural communities. So that's really important to me. I want people from all walks of life to live their lives as though any boundaries are imaginary. So boundaries around gender, boundaries around sexual orientation, or religion, or political beliefs, or any of the other things that we set up to ostracize each other.
Yeah.
I just think that that's, even sororities and fraternities, I got in a lot of trouble in college because I was like, no, you people don't talk to these people. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed, but at the time I was in school, that was, prevalent. So it brings me joy to see people sitting in a room together, all from all walks of life. So we meet at an AME church, my church, AME church, a Catholic church, a mosque, a synagogue, men, women, children, and we all sit there and make menstrual care products for girls thousands of miles away who most people will never meet.
Right.
And yet we sit there and we laugh and we talk and we eat and we tell stories. We ask, well, what's your menstrual story? And the men say, well, let me see. I haven't had one yet.
But we know it'll come.
But we know it'll come. So they laugh until we get to Africa. And we have certain assumptions about men in Africa. I had some assumptions. I thought, well, they're not going to want to talk about menstrual care products. But sometimes they are translators.
Oh, yeah.
And one principal of the school translated for us all day as we trained the girls on how to use these kits. They're washable, they're reusable, a sustainable product. And he would translate for us. And then at the end of the day, he said, may I have 2 kits for my wife and my daughter?
Oh.
And I said to him, well, you could, but we don't give the kits unless we can train people how to use them.
Yeah.
Who's going to train them how to use the kits? He said, I'm going to train them. I've been talking about this all day. I can train. I was like, you got it, brother. Here are your kids. Yeah. So we've just found perceptions of other people get squashed when you get to know other people.
Yeah.
So rather than coming in with these assumptions, ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a class where a young girl had started her period and stained her clothes. And she said that one of her male classmates walked up to her. She was at the chalkboard writing. He walked up to her. He just tied his jacket around her waist, put his arm around her shoulder, and walked her out and told her that she had stained. No laughing, no ridicule, no shame.
That's beautiful.
And I mean, how could you not feel joyous learning that there are people in the world, young people in the world, who can do that without batting an eye? And I get to be on a front row seat to see all of that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any practices that that nurture and grow your internal joy, your internal sense of joy that doesn't come from service?
Do I have any practices that don't come from service? Wow. Nicola, that's a great question. So I get accused of working all the time in my projects, so I'm trying to figure out. I think that's probably one of my shortcomings. Gosh, do I have any practices that don't come from service? Well, I quilt. Does that count?
Kinda.
I'm gasping.
I only say kinda because I know how much you enjoy the act of quilting.
Yeah.
And I also know how you create these just spectacular pieces of art that then get donated or auctioned for a service.
Wow.
So
I think I'm going to have to work on that because I'm not good at resting. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have. I'm trying to think other than quilting, and I don't donate all of my quilts. I mean, I sell some, I keep some, I make them for my friends and relatives and all of that. So maybe, and I do relax when I quilt. It gives me a creative outlet.
Yeah.
But I get so much joy from the things that I do in life that I don't think I need to take a break from it. And that's probably not a good thing. So I'm not advocating that.
I think the inquiry is important because it's good to inquire.
Yes.
Because if you notice that, maybe I could try this on, that's one thing.
Yeah,
but if
yeah.
you're like, actually, everything I do is self-replenishing.
It really is.
So,
I'm beginning to feel a little guilty about that because I remember once I was talking, I had a therapist years ago, and she said, you need to just go to the park and she says, you're not good at being. You're really good at doing, but you're not good at being. And just go to the park and lie out on the grass and look up at the sky and just breathe and relax. And I was like, and then what do I do? She said, no, you're missing the point. You're not going to do anything. So I don't know that I have...
I say try it on, explore it,
I'm
and
gonna
if it feels good to you, do it.
Well, my leg is broken, right? And my friends say, well, I guess God just decided to sit you down. I'm like, no, God and I don't do that kind of thing. But I think there may be some validity to maybe you just need to take a break. So I'm practicing that. I'm trying to just, that question is going to haunt me. What do you do to replenish yourself other than service? This will have to be part 2.
Part 2. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So I have seen I've seen your home that is filled with amazing and beautiful art from all over the world. And I know I've seen how joyful you are in travel, because that's how I met you, is
Right.
on a trip, right? What advice would you give to the community at large about growing and nurturing and cultivating joy?
Well, one of the things that I heard years ago was, if you're going to laugh about it later, you may as well laugh about it now. So that if you're in a situation that is not all that pleasant, but in hindsight it will be funny, then just try to laugh about it now. Because laughter is healing. Yeah. Joy is healing. And now, when I broke my leg, I was lying there in pain. And I said, well, if you're going to laugh about this later, you may as well laugh about it now. That there is nothing funny about this. So I couldn't find the joy at the moment, right? But lying here every day trying to heal, there are some funny moments. And so I guess my advice is to look for the joy. Grab it. Create it. If you're not feeling joyous, find some way to get it, because life is short and then you die.
I love that.
And if you haven't brought some joy in your life, what was that all about? I met with the Dalai Lama in India. My daughter and I went
Wait a minute.
What?
Wait a minute. You're not about to just roll. I heard it before it even happened. You're not about to just roll.
Yeah, we met with the Dalai Lama.
That we met.
Yeah, we did.
What, you met with the who?
The Dalai Lama.
The who? The what?
In Dharamsala, India. My daughter and I, my older daughter and I.
Wow.
And he talks a lot about joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we're called to the planet.
Yeah.
We're here to experience joy. And I've been in situations where people don't have money and they're joyous. Where they are not surrounded by the stuff that we're surrounded by in this country, and they're joyous. They sit and talk to each other and laugh and tease and play games and sing. And so for me, seeing all that all over the world teaches me that while I have stuff, too much of it in fact, that's not what my life is about.
Right.
I collect stuff when I go places because I want to point to, that was on our trip to, that was when we were in Timbuktu. That kind of thing. But the stuff is not what life is about. It really isn't. And so many of us spend our life energy collecting stuff and not relating to people, not just sitting and talking. There are people who go to Africa only to see the animals. And I'm like, there are people in Africa. Did you know that?
Oh, the people who are, you've been to Africa? Tell me about the animals. I'm like, yo.
And the animals are wonderful, but there are people in Africa.
Yeah.
Wonderful people who I can learn so much from. There's a group of graduate students at the University of Washington who I just met. And these are some really smart people. I mean, like one who's told me that I'm now her mother. You're my mother. I'm going to call you Malu. She calls me that, and she calls me almost every day. And she says, and I'm going to come to the house, and I'll be coming home. Because she was organizing support for African students.
That's right.
Who come to the university and get no support when they get here. They arrive at SeaTac, no one picks them up. They don't know where they're going to live. Their visa, they try to use their visa card. It gets canceled because the people in their home countries think that someone's committing fraud because they're in a different country. Their money from the university hasn't shown up yet. They go to look for an apartment, and people say things like, well, you're from Africa. I don't know if you're going to bring rats in here. I mean, you're going to bring a rat from Africa? That's transporting. Why would you do that? It's just absurd kinds of things that happen to people. One young woman said she was 4 months pregnant when she came and didn't know. She thought she'd just get off the plane and get on the bus and go, Took her 8 hours to get from SeaTac to the University of Washington. 8 hours. So I'm working with these young people to be sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And they, oh, Malu, thank you so much. I'm like, if you knew how much joy this brings me, you would charge me some good money. Because that's the thing, people think you're doing something for them, and it's purely selfish because I get to have joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just never occurs to me that everybody doesn't want to do that. It's like, you mean you're not doing anything for anybody? What's wrong with you? I don't say it quite like that, but that's what I'm thinking. It's like, yeah. So just meeting them and doing, people in Seattle are very generous, very generous. People donating sofas and chairs and desks and pots and pans and dishes and sheets and mattresses, and without any pressure.
Right.
I just sent an email out and people, oh, I got this, I'll bring. And then I get to meet all these wonderful people. Wow. One of them came and didn't have an apartment. She's from Ghana.
Oh, okay.
She spent 2 nights with me. We just had the best time. Auntie Lou, I'm coming back. She lives in Linwood. Do you know last week she caught 2 buses and the light rail to come to see me?
Oh, so sweet.
And I said, well, just spend the night. You know where your room is. She said, no, I have an early class. I'll be back next week. So, it's like, why would I not have all this fun?
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine it being any different.
What would you tell children about joy?
I tell them the same thing I tell adults because I tend to talk to children like they're adults. And by and large, they're a lot smarter than some adults that I know. So I just say to them, you need to give back to somebody else. And when you do, it'll come back to you fourfold. And you'll have more than you ever gave. And I know that to be true.
Yeah.
So and kids get that.
Yeah.
They sometimes get it better than adults who've been sort of acclimatized to me and mine, and I've got to keep it. And the kids are like, oh, I'll go play with so-and-so.
Yeah.
Because nobody's sitting with so-and-so. Or I'll give you half of my sandwich because you don't have one. I mean, kids get that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I say anything different to kids than I say to adults. And I'm so glad the kids tend to hear me. They do.
Are there any projects that you want the community to know about in the next? We're recording in the winter, or heading into the winter time, and this will probably be screened for the first time in the spring. Do you have anything between now and the spring that you want the community to know about?
Oh, I always have something.
I know.
I always have something. I think one day they're going, oh, here she comes. So a couple things. So we have the Seattle Limbe Sister City Association that I mentioned, and we have a website, www.seattlelimbe.org.
And that's Limbe?
Limbe, which is our sister city in Cameroon. And we just finished a water project where we dug what they call a borehole. We called it a water well. Dug a borehole and built a storage tank in collaboration with Seattle Rotary 4.
Okay.
And they brought in 5 other Rotaries, and we brought in the Limbe Rotary so that we could have clean water at this regional hospital.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we will be doing more water projects.
Okay.
And primarily because I love to drink water and I want people to have clean water. And water is, without water, we don't survive.
Right.
And so we want to do more water projects. So if people want to help with that. I'm sure people want to help with that.
Oh, absolutely, people
So
want to help with
absolutely. So that's one thing. We will start our sewing circles, we call
Okay.
them, again in March.
that. All right, nice.
If COVID behaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we will have people, men, women, children. Our youngest was 4 when he started.
Oh,
And
that's
he
so
learned
sweet.
to sew at the sewing circle.
Yes.
4 years old. Our oldest had her 90th birthday at a sewing circle. Wow. So men, women, children join us at First AME or at Beth Shalom Synagogue or at Beth Hassan Mosque in Monroe. We drive to Monroe.
Okay.
Or at Assumption Church when Beth Shalom is not available. So I would love for people to do that.
Okay. What is the best way for folks to connect with that work?
The website.
The website. And what is the website for the? Is that through the sister cities as well?
It's SeattleLimbe.
Okay.
.org. So that's how to get in touch with us.
Okay.
We also have a store on our website so people can buy things from Africa. We have Bamaleke hats.
Are those the ones with the little
popcorn?
The yes. They're crocheted, right?
Yes.
Those are so cute.
I know, and everybody loves them. We could have sold 50 of them at the quilt show in Puyallup last year because we wore them and people were like, oh, where'd you get that? I want one of those. Yeah. So those are on there. We have fans that we got in Togo. We're going to have wine totes.
Okay.
That we are making and bowl cozies that are made of African fabrics.
Yeah.
And so just as ways to get people familiar with our work and to help us with our work.
Yes.
Because we don't plan to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're trying to do is bring younger people on to our board.
Yeah.
Because, one day I may get tired in about 40 years. And so
that sounds about right.
That sounds about right. And we want young people to be ready to step up and move forward. So we have some younger people we've brought onto the board so people could join us in any of that work. Yeah. Always have something for people to do. My grandmother said, idle mind is the devil's workshop.
It sounds like you took that
to heart.
Different level.
I did. Some days I wonder, is that too much? Is it extra? And I do believe that we have to stay busy doing something for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes back.
For sure.
It comes back fourfold.
Well, LueRachelle, thank you so much for spending time. Thank you for saying yes to this project.
Oh, absolutely. I'd say yes to you for anything.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Well, really, again, appreciate your time and looking forward to having more engagement with your projects, too.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thank you for asking me. This was fun and brought me great joy.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, there, Michael brought the light. Thank you. So, so the next part of our program is questions and answers. What questions do y'all have for Miss LueRachelle? Yes, Alfreda.
And could you say your names for those people who don't know you?
Hi, my name is Alfreda Lanier. I have a question. You asked a couple questions of LueRachelle, what periods of her life, what things brought her joy. And so you stopped at the 20s and 30s. So I know she's 39. So I'm just curious, that period of 30 to 39, were there any periods of your life that brought you joy after the 20s and 30s that you would care to share?
Yeah, when I had my children, it was actually a mixed bag because I divorced shortly after I had my second daughter, and so I was a single parent for 17 years or so, but just watching them grow and become the people that they are, that brought me great joy. Still does. You never know what those little critters are going to be when they grow up. It's like you do the best you can and then hope for the best. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say I asked that because when we talk about joy, joy and happiness are not necessarily the same thing. So that when life happens, we find joy out of the experiences that sometimes are the toughest things in the world. So, thank you.
Oh, in the back.
Okay. Oh. Okay, I have a question. So your grandchildren, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no worries. I can stand. My name is Lee Ann. I am the youngest daughter of LueRachelle. So my question is, your grandchildren tease you because you've been all over the world, which is not accurate. You have not been all over the world. So are there any countries that you would like to visit that that you have not visited, that you have plans, not just, whimsical thinking, no, that you have like plans that you would like to visit?
You could just scream it out. So, I'm probably willing to go. Oh, there's an echo, Michael. Do you want that? I'm probably willing to go any place. I'd like to go back to Mali and go back to Egypt because I didn't spend enough time in either of those places. I have not been to Australia. I've not been to New Zealand. I'd like to do that. And I'd like to do it pretty quickly because how many hours is that to go to, and the mind is willing, but the body may not be. But that's a great question, Leanne. Thank you.
So we're using the microphone so the online audience can hear.
Hi, my name is Naima Forrest Paramore, and I am the granddaughter of LueRachelle. I have one question. When's the sewing circles? Oh, the sewing circles. When are they?
Yes, when are they?
Yes, and I'm thrilled that Naima asked that because she's also asked me to teach her to sew. And so as soon as that happens, I'm sure she's going to be participating in the sewing circles that occur on the fourth Saturdays of every month. We will not be meeting in June, but other months we'll be meeting fourth Saturday at First AME at 10 o'clock from 10 to 2. And if my board members would raise their hands, you can ask them anything about the sewing circle, or anyone who's participated, they can tell you. So would you just raise your hand if you can tell people tonight about the sewing circle? Don't be shy. What did I say, June? We're not, thank you. We're not meeting in May. We are meeting in June. Yeah. And right now we're only meeting at First AME. Just pulling that together has been post-COVID experience. So, yeah. Thank you, Naima. Her middle name is Thalia, so she's named for my mother. Yeah.
Okay, this one coming back.
Hi, my name is Mercy. Hi, Kathy. And I'm one of the ones that has the pleasure of having met you in a professional setting and seeing how you transform relationships from your work into like your personal life and bring joy in everything that you do. My question is, on the video, you were stumped by the question of what outside of service brings you joy? So I'm wondering, from the time then to now, are there any things that you've done that's brought you joy outside of service, or any other reflection you have from that question?
So I met Mercy at University of Puget Sound. Pacific Lutheran, that's right. When I was doing some work there, and I was doing focus groups, and Mercy was in one of my focus groups, and at the end of it, she came up to me and she said, I have to know you, and I'm going to follow you. And she's been with me ever since, so yeah, I love it when that happens. So one of the things, well, travel gives me joy, and it helps me relax once I get there. You know, getting on the plane and getting to the destination is not. But I actually spent 3 months in Mexico this year and 4 months in Mexico pre-COVID. So, you know, I relax that way. What I've learned is I have to get away from my house because, you know, there's laundry, there's windows that need, you know how we go with that. And so if I leave my house, and so I would not recommend to anyone that you just think that you have to work all the time. That's not a good thing. It's just not. And I've examined myself for a long time saying, where did that message come from? And I'm not sure. My mother used to say, you can do more in an hour than most people can do in a day. And I took that as a compliment. And I probably should have taken it as a self-examination opportunity to say, why is that? Because you don't need to be busy all the time. You really don't. You don't. So I know that you're my younger buddy, but don't follow suit on that one. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Frances Carr, and I have known LueRachelle for a very, very long time. And I can share this with you, and you probably heard this theme resonated throughout her interview, but she is a woman of faith, and I remember quite well many years ago when she was at the University of Washington and was thinking about taking that giant step to leave the university and start her own consulting firm. And she sort of met it with a little bit of fear and trepidation, but she did it, and she followed through on what her grandparents had told her. Go for what you want and always take God with you. But my question really, LueRachelle, is when you and a group of women first went to Africa and you met with a group of women, and as you introduced yourself, they said, you are the lost ones, the stolen ones. Could you elaborate on that for us a little bit about what you talked about and what you told them?
Yeah, that was actually a comment that was made to Marsha. And because people in Africa are not necessarily taught about what happened to us once we got here. And that, the first time I learned that, I was surprised because I thought, well, they know what happened to us. We're the same people. They have to know. But they were taught history from a European perspective, just as we were taught history from a Eurocentric perspective. So they don't know about us. And so what they told Marsha was they recognized you were the stolen ones. So they knew that we had been stolen, but they didn't necessarily know our history. And the Marsha actually wrote a book called The Stolen Ones. So if you can buy that book, it's, for us, it was a wonderful recognition that they saw the connection, that they knew we were the same people. And a lot of us don't know that. I've actually had people say, I haven't lost anything in Africa, black people saying that. And I say, you have, you just don't know you have. You have. And so part of our life's mission, Dr. Hollins, is to tell people what they've lost. That's on this side of the racial equity work. And then we do the other work to help white people understand why it's important to know the history. But some of it we have to know ourselves. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Mo. And Frances was my Sunday school teacher for 50 years.
Hey, Lou. I want you, the question that I'd like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mo, or some folks know me as Michelle. Depends on when I've met you in life. I'd like you to speak to, I see a lot of people in this room that have known you a long time, some people that are just meeting you right now, and I'd like you to speak to, and I'm pretty much new to the crew relative to some of the friends that you have in here. I'd like you to speak to how important the women, some of the women that are in here right now that you've known from your 20s and your 30s, and therefore how important was it to have the type of friendships that last through the ages in helping you sustain your joy when you trip and fail and whatever, keeping you on track? How important is that? One of the things my mother, who was 90, told me when she met the crew was how happy she was that I had friends, sisters, that were friends and sisters like when she came up, that you can call in the middle of the night, that would be there when you cry, and so on and so forth. So will you speak to that? Because this was something that brought her great joy.
Oh, this is, yeah. So when my husband, I started saying my first husband. I say that and it's like I have 12 of them, but my ex-husband and I divorced. We actually had what was called The Village. And The Village was a group of people who we ate Christmas dinner together and Easter, and there were times when there were actually times when we didn't have enough food. Lynn and I would get together and have dinner, and the kids thought it was picnic time because we'd make it a party. They didn't know that it's because she had some beans and I had some rice, and we had enough for some cornbread. The kids weren't supposed to know that. But the village helped me survive. And, you know, people ask us if we had dues for the village. I mean, it's like, no, it's not that kind of village. No. And then there were people who thought that it was an exclusive village, but it wasn't, because anybody who just wanted to basically hang out and eat and laugh and talk and have a good time was welcome to come. And people would say, oh, I'm so grateful you invited me to the village. I'm like, you just had to show up with a dish, honey. That's all this is about, you know. And then as life has gone on, the village has expanded. So, you know, we traveled together. I broke my leg. I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to eat. Folks came, sat up with me all day and worked from my house instead of theirs. Sometimes I just look at it and I just can't even imagine how I got to be this blessed, you know. Today I was trying to figure out how to put the food out. I called Chef Deb and she's like, oh, yeah, I'll be there. Don't worry about it. And then she made me go sit down, you know, which I was grateful for because this foot is kicking my butt. But I mean, it's just examples like that when you know you can depend on people. And remember the young Ghanaian that I told you about who came and stayed with me 2 nights, then left, and now she stays with me whenever I'm here. And I just want you to meet her. Come here, Audrey. She's going to be mad that I'm doing it, but come on anyway. She's leaning back instead of forward. So let me tell you about this girl. She lives with me now, and if I eat some food, I try to stand up to put my dish in the sink. She takes it out of my hand and washes it. I put dirty glasses in the sink last night. I got up this morning. They are washed and put in the drain, and then she's gone on to school. So I'm going to videotape her and let my grandchildren see how she... Yeah, she's pretty amazing. And who was I talking to today about elders and how people from Africa tend to really honor their elders? It's like if you say it, and I asked her, I said, well, if your mom told you to do something, what would you say? She said, I get up and do it. You know, it's not like a discussion. It's like, well, do I really want to do that? No, you'd get up and do it, right? So I love you, Audrey. And Sandrine is back there. Raise your hand so they know who I'm talking about. Sandrine is from Cameroon, and her parents host us like living royalty when we go to Cameroon. I mean, we want for nothing. And we want, you know that pineapple pop that Mom has at her house? And we fell in love with this pop when we were in Yaoundé. And somebody said, oh, that pop is so good. I wish I had some. We had to drive back by there for Mom to give us a case of the pop. I mean, it's like you can't say anything because then your every need is accommodated. So, Mo, I hope that answers your question. It's like life and breath. Because now I don't worry about anything, because I know I can call people and say, can you come see about me? And I hope they know that they can call me and say, come see about me. So there's reciprocity. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take these two last questions and then have an opportunity for us to love on LueRachelle. You ain't going to get out of here without us loving on you. Well, no, you ain't felt the love yet. So, but it's coming. So I'm going to take these two, and if there's anybody who has a burning desire to have a question, just let me know. But we're going to try and wrap it up in the next three.
Thank you, Grandma. I can introduce myself very fine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So for those of you who are kindly not listening, my name is Nasir Forrest Paramore. I am the second oldest of the grandchildren of LueRachelle Brim-Atkins. I just remembered the name by looking at the screen. 14 years old. No, 15. My bad. 15. Man, it's gonna be hard getting used to that. But I'm going to bring this back to a kid perspective and ask an absolutely learning kid question. What is the difference between parental and whatever else you said with the parenting style or whatever? You said something about your parental grandparents or something. Paternal and maternal. I'm learning.
You are. So I said maternal grandparents. I think that, and so that means the parents of my mother. And paternal is the parents of my father. So it's like Papa, that's how you can remember. Papa is paternal and Mama is maternal. Yeah, great question. Dr. Hollins. That's my girl.
Dr. Hollins.
I was going to say I didn't have any profound questions. I just wanted to love on her for a minute. Can I start with that, or did you want to open it?
Any other questions that we really need to get out before we move on to the love fest? Okay. All right, these two, and then thank you, Dr. Hollins.
I'm Reverend Dr. Doris Cope, and Reverend Sister Dr. Doris Cope, Reverend Sister Dr. My question is, how would you encourage young women to create villages now? They're looking for men.
Ooh, that's a juicy question. Thank you. I'm listening.
That's a, you know, we talk about that very question a lot because I was formed primarily at the church and then went out from there. And not everyone's in a church. So I would just say, and we had kids around the same age. The kids went to Sunday school together. They went to church together, and that's really how it started. But I know that people still need community, even if they're not associated with a church. So I say find people who are like mine. Talk about what's important to you. Talk about what your values are and why you want to be friends, why you want to be in it together. And, develop a sense of reciprocity. So if you do something for somebody, you don't have to look for them to do something for you, but you do have to be willing to do something in return. You see the difference? It's not like, I did something for you, Phyllis, so you need to do something for me. It's just, we're in this together. Today it's my turn, tomorrow it may be yours. And Mary Bogan, who some of you know, she and I have talked about that on many occasions, because we used to do what we call the Black Santa brunch. And we'd pay money, and everybody would go to Salty's or someplace, and we'd have and we put our money together to buy this Santa Claus suit. And nobody's used it since our kids grew up. And she still has it. She's hoping somebody will ask to use it, but nobody seems interested. So that's a really profound question. I just, yeah.
I'm Kathleen Ryan. LueRachelle, what is this like for you? You've had this beautiful film done, and I saw you watching it and trying to imagine what would that be like. Since you're far from done, this is not exactly a legacy moment for you, but I mean, you're headed in that direction, and you've got a lot of looking back, which, Nicole, you did such a beautiful job on. But I'm just wondering, what is this evening like for you, and being here with all these people who love you so much, and having this conversation where you get to respond to these very thoughtful questions?
So Kathleen was my mother in a prior life. We remind each other that, because if I need reprimanding, she avails herself. Advice. When I need advice, she makes herself available. I have to confess, I'm completely overwhelmed. I mean, I'm just, you think sometimes you just do things and you don't know if anybody's watching, and you don't care if anybody's watching. You just want to do your thing, and then when you find out somebody's watching, you're like, oh my God, they were watching. I mean, you have no idea how appreciative I am of this. I had no idea what it was going to be like. And I said, oh, what if Nicole gives me a party and nobody comes? And you go through all that stuff. But I'm just grateful. I think that's my word. Just grateful that y'all love me, and I get to love you back. That's kind of how I feel. I'll sleep good tonight. Mo and I compared notes on who got any sleep last night, so I'm going to sleep well tonight.
Okay, this is the absolute last before we roll into the love, sir.
Hello, I'm Willie Robinson. I'm Dr. Cope's husband. And LueRachelle and I became friends when we came to First AME Church. But I can relate to what she's saying about the village, because I started in Virginia. So Portsmouth and Norfolk, Virginia, but my family come from Suffolk and Portsmouth, Virginia. And I can relate to the village. I can deeply relate to the village. I was just telling my wife last night, there was angels that watched over me. There were some strong angels that watched over me. But I wish we could go back to that. And what do you think about, as far as our church, First AME, creating that part of the village for young people, especially for the preschool and the toddler age children at at our church and in the community.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to talk to some of the younger people because Lynn is old and I'm old and and Alfreda is old. 39. So I think that's a very good question and a very serious question. And I think we did some of it a couple years ago. Sarah Ellen Sisterhood did what we call Grandma's Hands.
Yes.
And we got together with the younger people and we taught them how to bake monkey bread, and we sat in workshop. Brenda, Miss Card's daughter, did a workshop, and I think we have to start at Sandrine's daughter's age. And how old is Anais? 15, 16. We have to start early to get them to know what a village means to the larger community. So did you just give us an assignment, Sweet Willie?
Well, one thing is, too, that I would speak on this, is because what I'm saying is the village. There are young men out there today that can't even tie a necktie. So we need not only just the women. Women taught me everything I know in my life because I was raised by women. All of my aunts, my grandmother's sisters, all on the block, and friends. But we need men to help teach the younger males and give them some outlook on life.
We'll talk about that further and do it together. How's that?
Okay, so I'm gonna call upon the spirit of the village and ask y'all to keep your love to like 55 seconds so that we have time to snack and then get out of here at a respectful hour. But I would like for everyone to share some love to Miss LueRachelle. You know, let her know, whatever's on your heart for her, but leave her filled and inspired and ready to go get some joy in addition to the service, right? Okay, starting with
55 seconds, really? Well, okay, right, all right. And so tell me though, Nakala, beautiful. Well, just the two of you, I felt joy watching it. Love the still image. So I'm going to start now, but I just wanted to. Yeah. LueRachelle, I have felt emotional watching and listening and seeing you. Just grateful for what you've poured into my life. Now, the thing is for me is that I can't say oh, you did this thing or you did that thing. It is who you are. Just being able, I calculated, I'm I've known her for 30 years. I want to brag about that. But I have all these memories of you and being in awe and feeling ooh, who's that lady? And I want to be like that. Things that I'd never seen before, things that I'd never experienced. And I really believe you are a shoulder that I'm standing on. I believe that God brought me to you so that I could see what is possible for me, and that it didn't come from necessarily any service or any, it's just who you are as a parent, what your soul is about. Your being is beautiful, it's joyful, it's contaminating, and I love you. And I am just grateful to have had the honor and the privilege of being a part of your life. And thank you for everything that you've been for me and that I know you will continue to be for me. Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Hollins is a racial
I was an admin assistant for you. Okay, coming and filing things, watching this amazing woman do these things while raising 2 children, and I never knew that that was my destiny. And God placed me in your spaces because I was limited in what I could see for myself until I met you.
I've known LueRachelle for eternity is not a good word, but I I was graced to come in her presence, and she brought me full circle from a situation that I didn't even know was a situation. It was a situation. And I managed to rise above and move forward because of LueRachelle. She didn't ask any questions. She knew whom I was dealing with, and she took me in. And that's part of the reason I am still in Seattle, and I have flourished in Seattle because of her grace, her opening her arms and saying, yeah, you can come here. And then she kind of gave me, now you know what's going on, right? But just very, very thankful, very appreciative. And I am humbled by the opportunity to be able to thank her in public for the space that she provided me. And I do love you, LueRachelle. All right, so, yes, thank you. Thank you. You sure?
To me. Miss LueRachelle, I think I've known you for 2 years, and the minute I met you, I just loved you. I remember calling you and asking if I could come and hang out with you. Came to your house, put my feet up, felt right at home. Remember when I was out of work, I called you one day and I said, I am so worried. And you went, why are you worried? I was like, because I don't have a job. He's like, it's okay. You have faith. You're going to be okay. And I appreciate that spirit in you. You're just beautiful, inside and out. And you pour love, and I feel it, and I love to be around you. I feel like I can come and just hang out and just be at home. Yeah, just be. So I appreciate you. Love you too.
You remember that time you came to my house with the flowers and the vase, and we were gonna make flower arrangements. Do you remember that? I remember that. Yeah. I put mine down. I gave it a thought a minute. I looked up, and yours was all done. I said, whoa, she's fast. And I seem like I've been trying to catch up to you ever since. But really, all the camping, all the tents, all the trips to the mountains, to the lakes, the rivers, the canyons. We have all of that to remember. And I cherish every moment of that. And every moment we had those kids together. And we would push them, run off, and they would run through the the campground at night. In the camp, and they'd come over and, whose children are this? We don't know. These are the parts of my life that I hold, I cherish. And it's because of you.
All right. Well, LueRachelle, Sister LueRachelle, I just want to thank you for teaching through your actions what ministry is. I went over there at Seattle U and I studied those books, but that's not what ministry is. And so I just thank you for being such an example of what real ministry is. And you just have us all symbolically at your feet, just like she's doing now. So thank you for loving on us. Thank you.
Lou, I just wanted to say there's some real highlights. Oh, Don Foster. All right, okay. Highlights for me, I think, are really were being able to be invited by you to take part in some of your endeavors, and I think I even made one camping trip with you too. But I'm talking about, I think it was 14, 15 years ago, we loaded up a container for Kenya, right? That was a huge, gigantic endeavor to make all those arrangements, get a container lined up, and then all the international shipping and everything, and all that's involved, and all the volunteer work that went into that, all the people that donated goods and materials, hospital beds, bicycles. I remember all kinds of things going in there. And we spent that one day, all day, loading it up with an army of volunteers that came in. It was quite remarkable. And to this day, the two fellows that came with me from moving company, when I last saw them, they asked, this was years later, remember that container we loaded up? And how did that go? And they, you know, it impacted them, you know, and they had no connection with the endeavor itself, but it just spread out, and that was just one example. So I just recall that, and the block party. I'll never forget the block party. You had yeah. It was a blast. And then lastly, thank you for being a special friend to Zenda for so many years, too. I just want to comment on that.
I just have to say, though, before Dawn passes the mic on, so Dawn is a member of our church, he's a member of the encounter group, and so I'm going to make a confession here. When I first saw Dawn in the encounter group, and he was married to Zenda, who is black, Dawn is white.
Oh, really?
No.
Say no, I'm not. You didn't tell us. You did not tell us. Come on, Dawn.
Is this a big reveal?
Let me tell you why I say that, because my first reaction was, who is this white man with this black wife? And it took maybe a month of encounter group Sundays, and I forgot that Dawn was white. Because, and I know we equity people say, what you mean you can't see color? You know, all that. I get that. But this for me was different because Dawn is Dawn.
That's right.
Dawn.
That's right. Yes.
And
That's right. Yes.
he doesn't try to be anybody else other than Dawn. And he's consistent. I called him up and said, could you get some people to pack this big container? He brought a crew over. They worked all day. They were professionals. So they knew what they were doing. They put all this stuff these things get to Kenya. And his guys were like, well, y'all pray, but we're going to back up here. And we're like, no, come on, it won't hurt, we promise. And they got in that circle, and we prayed, and every single item got to the intended person. So, and the other piece is, Zinda, his wife, passed away recently, and that's a, but his son, Jacoby, was one of my daughter Laren's best friends. And I got pictures of all those kids in my kitchen too. Now, Sean said that Laren and Jalila couldn't boil water because they were trying to boil Easter eggs from Easter Egg Hunted Church. And they took the eggs out and the eggs were still running. So the joke between Kobe and Sean was, he can't even boil eggs. But Kobe was, and when we lost him, I thought, but Don and Zinda had faith. It just kept moving.
That's right.
Kept participating, kept loving all the rest of us, even in their pain. And I have never had that. And just,
Okay, my name's Deborah Burton, and 2017 I moved back to Seattle after my mother passed, and I was at the block party. And Lou said, "You want to go to Africa?" And I said, "Yeah." And I, didn't know anyone really. But I just want to say that I'm so glad I took that leap because I became a part of the village. And I'm still part of the village. And I'm so grateful for it. But another thing I want to say is I'm watching her rub your feet, and that's what love is, and I think that's just beautiful. And I'm so glad I'm here to see you get your flowers. A lot of times people don't get their flowers while they're here, and I'm so grateful. I know you're going to get more, but I'm so glad that I'm here to see you get your flowers. Love you.
Chef, didn't tell you that in the hotel kitchen in Cameroon, she took over the kitchen, and the chef of the kitchen watched her while she prepared dinner for us.
It was fun.
It was. Next time you come with us.
Loving reminder for 55 seconds.
Okay. I'm going to reclaim my 55 right here. So, my name's Elfrida Lanier, and I want to say that I came to First AME Church for the second time. I had come years before and left for a long period. And I came back about 11 years ago, and I saw LueRachelle. I didn't know who she was, but I saw her in the church. So I saw the kind of spirit that she always carried. And this smile, which is her signature, was always with her. Well, a few years later, she was, I think that was the year that you had chaired the women's season. And you had asked if a few women would stay after church that might like to hear about a project. So I was one of the few women that stayed after and heard about this project, which was sewing these menstrual kits for girls in Africa. And it sounded wonderful. I had always had Africa on my bucket list, had never figured out how I would get there. And before I knew it, I was sewing menstrual kits, and a year later was on my way to Africa and have made every trip since that LueRachelle has made to Africa and just about any other place in the world. I will say, yes, and the work is, she said earlier that she is about, she doesn't spend her time not having something to do, right? I'm trying to keep up with her, all right? I co-chair with her. I would say she's the chair. I'm on the scooter. I'm trying to keep up. But I always appreciate your grace. You are always loving. Even challenges, you take them and they are, they're just, okay, so what do we have to do next? All right? So I so appreciate all that you have poured into me. And I just love you. And that's 54 seconds. Oh my goodness, 6. 6.
Not only Africa,
Colombia. I said any place. Any place.
Mexico.
Where next?
Mexico.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
So, I'm just like Alfreda, Lou. I was seeing you at church when my family first joined the church, and we were really close. So we got close with the Sewing Sister Project, and then I put you in connection with my family back home. But I want to say thank you for opening your heart and your home to my family. And as we are mourning my father-in-law, thank you for showing up the way you did last week as we were remembering his life and his legacy. I know I have a village here, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sandrine. So, LueRachelle, artist extraordinaire. I didn't realize that I knew you. Our kids actually went to the same daycare from almost day one. And I didn't realize it until I ran into you again and we started telling stories and you said, oh. And I was, I'm not I haven't been out in the community a lot. I'm kind of a recluse and not really out and doing this stuff. And somehow I had been told over and over again about this sewing circle thing. And one morning I decided to show up. And I brought my 4-year-old grandson that you talked, Micah. And as soon as I walked in the door, the love that everybody is talking about from you, now, I didn't realize it then, but now I know where it came from. What the genesis was, because I walked in and I felt this wash of peace and love and just joy of seeing all these people from all walks of life, all types of challenges. And after getting to know you more and more, I started going to First Day Meeting. Didn't join the church, but I was there so much that people thought I was a member. And that was because of the women and the people you attracted, the village that you had embraced me, because I was really cynical and scared, not trusting because of experience I've had with different women and so on and so forth. But from the time, Micah is now almost 12. That's been 8 years. From the first moment to this moment, you have been a consistent light, the essence of what they talk about when they say God uses us for vessels to bring the grace that he wants us to have through different people. You have consistently been there, not just for me, for my babies, from all the people that are around you, no matter where we are in the world. And as much as me and Elfrida and Deb and say, we're not going to let LueRachelle convince us to go to this and that and the other, because of who you are and how you are, you've convinced us, and it has brightened my life. It has brightened my family. And for my mother to call you a daughter, for my grandson to call you auntie, and my daughter to call you auntie, it is a blessing that I will hold in my heart to the day that I'm no longer on this planet. So I thank you. And one more thing. You're one of the most humble people, because I have tried to talk to you over and over again about your artistry and who you are as an artist, and it is so wonderful to see you finally embracing that. I say.
Lou, it's Jackie behind the mask. I apologize for coming late. I was taking care of my daughter. We know how it is as a mother. Yes, I wasn't going to miss it. It's just I was late. So I like our sister here, Phyllis. Yes, I know her name. I've only known you for about 2 years. Now, I have to reflect on what you said about the village. So we moved to Seattle. It'll be actually 6 years in December. But before we came, because we've moved quite a bit as a family, I had to make sure it was right. And one of the first things I did is I came to Fame. Your wife, I don't know if you know this. I'm going to get emotional. I had been in contact with Zinda because someone told me about her. And I went to Fame, and I felt home because I was raised in an AME church. And so everywhere we've lived, even in China, I was looking for a church. If I couldn't find a church, I wasn't moving. And when I came to Fame, and after talking to Zinda, because Zinda helped us move through the whole school system, she had me on the phone for an hour and a half. I don't even know where I was, some hotel, trying to figure out how to get the family moved. And she walked me through all these databases and all this stuff, so I knew the right place for my children. So she is hugely missed. But she took me after church behind the scenes where the food was being served. And we know what she used to make all the time, right? Those quiches, right? And I was like, they said, oh, come on in. Where are you thinking about moving to? And I went to Garfield and blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, oh, I'm so coming to this church even if I don't move here, right? But because of Encounter during COVID, it was a lifesaver. And that's where I met you. I know I've gone to church. You kind of go to church, you get the kids out of there, got something else to do. So, but the evolution of Encounter and knowing what we've gone through together and challenging ourselves on being Christians and, you know, doing the side chats and the Zoom so no one can see what we're talking about. Lou. And then we got on the phone a couple of times, just one-on-one. And I have watched your presence on those calls, using your social equity and racial equity, but your heart. And you know the verses, and you're personally challenged as well. And you confess that. You make it so approachable. I don't ever want to miss Encounter. So I'll be in my pajamas off the screen, but I'm listening and I'm learning so much from you. But the one interesting thing is I was just digging around in the Seattle Public Library records, and I came across your storytelling. And I was listening, I said, that voice sounds so familiar. And I listened to you. It's like from where I'm from. And it just really reminded me how important it is to tell our stories. And we talked about this on Encounter, and I said, we have intentionally, in my family, had our elders interviewed by our children. And we have recorded that on Zoom, because we couldn't do anything else but just to be on Zoom. But those children took the opportunity to talk to the elders, so skip a generation, and they asked them questions like, what'd you do when you grew up? What kind of food did you like? It wasn't like, where'd you work? It was more of, who are you? And we heard stories, and we laughed, and, you know, that creates a village. So my children are part of Fame. Fame has been blessing us with scholarships, and but it feels like I just know you all. And I feel like you are a sister, because we're about the same age, 39 roughly. But I feel in those, and I know I'm past 55 seconds, I don't care, because I got the mic. I love this environment. And I feel like no matter where I've moved, if I could find a church with real people like you in it, that love each other and know their roots and are not afraid to be vulnerable, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so my daughter, who has been and my son have been involved in church when they were in daycare in the church. Then they came teenage and they could actually help the babies, and now they're part of the youth part of the church, we got to bring them along. And so if it is to be, it is up to me. So if you see an empty spot, you got to fill it. Get those brothers back together. What was it called? The Mr. Program? The Mr. Project? Bring it back. These young men do need to see our brothers, but you got to bring it, right? And so I believe that if it is to be, it is up to me. And I want to make sure during women's season, which I am in charge of with Miss Sister Rosalind, that y'all come out and you bring a young person with you. Because now we can bring forward our women and girls, empower them, embrace them, and make them into the new Lou. So I love you too.
Who's next?
So, Leanne, you and LueRachelle, you and I have known each other since Leanne was 2 years old. Do you? Yes, Leanne is nodding her head. So I'll just keep to 55 seconds. I really can't imagine my life without you. Yeah, I know. So, yeah.
Lou, you said Lou brought you in without asking any questions. I came into Kathy's life about 8 years ago, and I can remember meeting Lou. I remember where you were sitting on the couch. And the question was pretty straightforward. Just, what are you doing that's worthwhile in life? And I must have had a good answer. I did. And
volunteering in Ethiopia, so.
yeah, so for 8 years you've been special to me. And today has been special. Thank you.
So Steve is a retired neonatologist, and he eats spam. Nothing in spam is good for you. He says, yes, but it's good to me. So he eats it anyway.
I just want to say also that Steve was the first person to respond at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I feel like maybe there was a fear of God in you. Make sure I'm going to be there. So.
Hi, Auntie Lou.
I don't want us to leave without my daughter saying something.
Okay. So I had the privilege of meeting Auntie Lou when I was, about 11, 12 years ago. I just moved to Seattle from New York. I'm from LA. And no, not Seattle. I was living in Parkland, in Tacoma. And so I was trying to figure out what I was doing with my life as a black woman, coming from big cities to Parkland. And one day we had this facilitator, you and Nalani. They came in and they were doing something for the university, trying to figure out, what they're still trying to figure out today is, what are we doing? And I just remember sitting in that space and just feeling you not just do your work, but having the care about it that transcends just any facilitator, just any job. And so like Auntie Lou mentioned, I walked up to her, I was like, you're in my life, I'm in yours, let's figure it out. And what I just know that I have been blessed with is, starting in my early 20s to where I am now, I've had both a fast track into what does it look like to be a fully actualized black woman in the Northwest who holds your core truly whole, but still is able to not just survive but thrive in these spaces, especially if you want to remember that you're black at all times. And that's something I don't take for granted because you've also given me a fast track into professional spaces, networking spaces, community spaces, just because I said yes to your spirit and said I want to be a part of it. And just being able to see that every space that you're in, one by nature is quality. So I know that if you recommend it, I'm saying yes. But also what it also opens me up to the different parts of spaces and where you're not just doing work, but people are loving on you, and it's vice versa. So Kathy and I are connected through another space called The Gathering. But that's the space what I appreciate about you is, as much as we're seeing the joy that you have for others, and I think that question stumped you, I've observed you still holding yourself whole and being very selfish when you need to be, even though people still see you as a loving LueRachelle, because you'll say no if you need to. And you'll say, this is all that I have to give and all that I will give. And you also take yourself offline for a few months to recharge. And so I just still see that as an example that I'm still operating with of it's possible to give so much in work that's really hard, but still find people and villages that can like love on you, but also treat yourself with care first. So I'm so blessed for you saying yes to that job and for saying yes to another person who wanted to be in your life, because over the years I've seen you add more people in, but also be loved by those as well. So you open the door both ways. So I'm just glad to be here, and I love you.
Okay, so I said a lot of my love in the video, but most recently, I just realized how much you model self-love, self-value, and self-worth. And I talked to you a couple of days ago about a new client that I had, and I was so excited that it was a community-based organization, folks that I wanted to serve, and they were able to pay me my full rate. And you were like, well, tell me your full rate. Let me tell you if you are charging enough. And apparently I was undercutting myself by $100 an hour, per hour. So just thank you for modeling that, because as Black women, we are really good at modeling service to our depletion. Like, we're self-sacrifice. We're excellent at modeling self-sacrifice, and we are growing in the space of modeling our value. So thank you for that. Ashay, who's next?
I'm the last one, and I'm also the baby, so that works perfectly fine. So, Mom, I absolutely love the fact that everyone here sees everything I see about you. So that says I see you as the adult that you are, and you let me in. So I'm no longer a child in the sense of like the baby. So I'm so thankful that we get to have our healed relationship, and we are now able to be on a level where you used to tell me when I was a kid, we're not equals. Well, we're not equals still, but we're closer. We're closer now. So I just really appreciate that you gave me a foundation that I can lean back, look at, from the music, singing, traveling. You already know the whole list keeps going on, and you gave us that. And I am just so thankful that y'all get to see what I get to live with. So thank you so much.
Right. Thank you all for being here. And Village, y'all got it done. It's before 8, and so we have a little bit of wiggle room to snack and mill about. Wait, did you? What's up?
I just want to say, you got it. You too. You and Michael got it done. I was looking at the quality of the video, that the way you would ask a question and wait for the answer. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This is one of the things I'm most proud of, to date. Like, I'm so proud of this project. So thank you for that. Well, y'all, we did it. Go ahead and get your snacks on. If you haven't met folks, introduce yourself, and certainly introduce yourself to me if I haven't met you yet. I want to know who I emailed with. All right, thanks. Snacks are in the back. All right.
Do you want a group picture?
Oh, yeah. Huh?
Yeah, that would be great. Do you want a group picture? Yes, that would be wonderful.
Michael, do you want to get in the group picture? Oh, you're gonna.
Not today. Well, actually, It's supposed to be streaming online. It is. So my friend tried to skip it. She said it wasn't working. I think they might have had it on. Oh, that was sent out? Okay,
I've actually already had the video already. I'll be
so I'm not professional, but I think you need to have like that one needs to be on and that one needs to be on because you want to account for the sunshine that comes in.
Wait,
so those two, the top right, the next to it, that one next to it, on here. Yeah, because I've watched stuff like this here. So as a professional, was it Deaf Dog? 100% bullshit. Please don't.
I'm all like,
I was like, you're taking me seriously.
I'm always open to feedback. Like, what you
Yeah, is this what you're looking at? Yeah.
He was after he was shower.
Yeah, it's a little baby, like a week old or something. And now he's 15. Right, so I will say it. This is not a 10 for it. He's like, wait, I'm sorry.
That's a production switcher, media player. You know how like whenever people play videos and things,
like, we're not doing that.
Yeah, I actually have the actual video on compressed on its own drive playing directly in here. I have that said it's a switcher.
I don't know if I'm easily impressed or impressed with it either way.
Either way, I appreciate it.
Right. So how, are you know Auntie as well?
I met her through the project.
Okay.
Yeah. I know the problem. Okay. And then she was like, I'm working on the project. Would you help me?
Oh, so you helped them before?
I did a unblocked video.
Beautiful work. Thank you. I